My name is Tony Qunta, and I play guitar, also play electric violin, and I sing lead vocals. Quite a few years ago, I had my own band a couple of different times. One was a three-piece band, very good kind of crossover, rocky, jazzy, fusion kind of band. And then at a later date, I had a four-piece band, which was pretty much all my original material. But the concept for this band kind of harks back a little bit to that three-piece band. I've always liked the idea of a three-piece lineup, different ones, like way back to Hendrix, Cream, people like that. But with the idea for this band was doing tunes, covering some certain kind of tunes, which had quite big arrangements. And I always used to think, I still want to play that tune, how do you pull that off with three people? And that's part of my attitude, as it were, to the three-piece lineup. With this band, I had the idea of what you could say, the basic kind of simplicity of only having three instruments, guitar, bass, drums, and also sometimes vocals, because the other thing was to do some instrumentals, some vocals, mix them up. Not many bands do that. I like the idea of not kind of being restricted in that way. But also, the three-piece band kind of tradition, certainly in the rock kind of vein, was having quite an edge and an attitude to it, and I like that. Although I like the thing of maybe having, at times, some more complex music and doing some interesting things musically, which three-piece bands traditionally wouldn't have done. So that was partly my concept for the Toneheadz project. And also we started off doing some of my originals and some covers, which kind of are ranging from kind of rocky things to a bit more fusiony, but even the fusion ones have a bit of a rock edge. Well, that's interesting. I mean, this is another thing we're going to do as part of what Toneheadz are doing. Is part of an original concept, kind of, for an album I had, an instrumental album, which I've done over the last few years. It's Taboo Guitar, and one of the things about that is that I always had the idea, because I've played in many different genres at different times, one of the things I've come across is sort of like what I could call a taboo. If you're playing something jazz or jazzy, you've got to have the big guitar with the F-holes, the traditional jazz guitar. Nothing wrong with that. Obviously, brilliant players play that, great sounds, but I've always thought, why you expected that somebody should have to play that kind of guitar? I always think it's just you're making some sounds with something. It's what you have in your mind that you might want to come out with a certain sound. That's one kind of taboo I've come across. The other one is, say, in the more like the pop world, at one time you'd have solos or instrumental passages in a pop song. All of a sudden it was taboo. Oh, you can't have a guitar solo anymore in that. Things like that. So I had this kind of like the humorous idea for the concept of taboo guitar. And that's what one of the ideas with this sort of album was mixing things which you wouldn't normally mix up to do with an instrumental album, especially guitar, especially where you've got some jazz elements in it, because I've never thought of myself as a jazz musician. I'm not. I always think of myself as a musician that's been influenced by lots of different things, like I say, classical, rock, jazz, pop, world music. To me, it's all music, and I love the idea of kind of mixing and fusing them and coming out with something that's individual. For example, Stevie Wonder, I always like the way he's done. He always sounds like Stevie Wonder, but you think, oh, he's doing this song, it's a bit flavoured this way, another song is some other kind of flavour to it. And with this Taboo Guitar album, the tracks are a little bit like that. They're quite individual as tracks, but I like to think they all are kind of me, certainly guitar-wise. I've sort of taken the liberty, really, of choosing songs which I think are fun to play. Some of them are challenging to play, but they're kind of dear to my heart in some way. Or one idea that I didn't want to do was just think of do this, do that, for kind of commercial reason, in the way of just to please people so you can make more likely to make money or do, something like that. I've done it from the heart, even if it's covered in other songs. It's something that means something to me, and it's got some emotion in there that really clicks with me. And some of these tunes I've been influenced by, or my favourites, harking back to the more difficult ones, to the great days of rock jazz fusion, I call it, where it was not really rock, not really jazz, great compositions, and the people were great playing, they were really going for it, and it sounded like something's happening, if you know what I mean. It's not just going through the motions. Well, I'm hoping everybody that loves good music, whatever that means, quality music I suppose you could call it, but it's got an attitude of coming from the emotion, the performance and all of that. And I think I've never been about the idea of, say, technique for its own sake or something like that. Having said that, I like some great playing that is, you could say, was quite, challenging technically, but it doesn't mean it's challenging to listen to if it's performed in the right way, or you're doing something that originally was kind of composed from the heart. And I think that's the essence of it. You're going to get people, because it's quite rocky, that love rock music, that might like rock guitar playing, and you might get some people that like jazz and a bit of world music and so on. There is a kind of pop element in there to some degree as well, and I think it is pretty much a crossover of quite a lot of things, so I think a lot of people could enjoy it. There was like the classical stuff, still influenced by that, and it kind of in that way influences this band in the way of some compositions, I would say. Then the rock stuff, the Hendrixes, loads of other people, I could be here for hours. Then it was influenced by people like Django Reinhardt, Wes Montgomery, the more jazzy things. Then the fusion bands like Weather Report, Mahavishnu Orchestra, and lots of others, the more properly jazz people like John Coltrane, Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter. Later, more prog rock like Genesis and all that. The rock bands like Deep Purple, and I suppose you could say more recently, with especially with guitar playing, the kind of rock fusion players like Joe Satriani, but always been influenced by a lot of pop things as well. Well, first of all, the name of the band is Toneheadz, which is sort of a bit of a play on my name, Tony, Toneheadz. Also the idea of tone is kind of a musical thing in there. I knew that I was going to be doing some quite challenging music and interesting music, and I always remember Jimi Hendrix's quote where he came over to the UK and he started the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and there's some quote on his first album about him choosing the best musicians he could find, creating his own personal sound, his own universe or something like that. Well, I had this idea a bit along those lines, so I knew that I'd have to have some really good musicians. So I've been very, very fortunate to have two great musicians, great people, brilliant to work with, and we are friends as well, and we really, you know what I mean, we really get on. I think that's important to create really nice music. So on bass there is Chaz Maguire, great bass player, and also sings really well, and on drums is Roger Batty, first-rate drummer. Yeah, they're both great players, great guys. Toneheadz is a very unusual band, three-piece band that performs like a rock band but plays at times some very interesting instrumentals and vocal tunes that are hard-hitting, very emotional, and takes you on a ride somewhere.